in the last 4 years, the one that are following the hype activity probably took part in few webinars that are talking about sports innovation. This is the first one that is focusing on purely the investment part and where the industry is going as far as the opportunities for investors and what's really happening from this side of the business. Now, we have a really special panelist today, and I will introduce them very shortly. I want to just start by saying that we've aimed originally for 20, 30 investors, but as I said, 72 investors registered. I can see more are joining in, and it's really, I think, demonstrates something about the appetite around sports innovation. When you speak to some of the investors, when you speak about sports innovation, it sounds originally or maybe initially as a niche. But when you think about sports innovation, you think about broadcasting, you think about fan engagement, smart stadiums, analytics, injury prevention, eSport, VR, AR, and more segments. This is huge. If I would have told you 5, 6 years ago that there will be a company which is creating like a bicycle platform from home that will be worth $4 billion, I'm sure you thought it would be unreal. The industry is going through massive transformation in the last few years. We can see it in every aspect of the game. And I think it's a great opportunity. It's a very rare opportunity to have the panelists that we've gathered here today with really an opportunity to hear different sides of the story. We have Uli Becker from the Boston currently, which was the CEO and the president of Reebok, and is also the chairman of the Hype Capital Fund. Very much in the last few years engaged and live and breathe the life of innovation in the world of sports from both sides, I would say, of the court. We have Javier Sobrino, the director of innovation of Barcelona, and again, knowing Javier in the last couple of years, and the mileage that he's doing around the world as a thought leader, as a leader in transforming clubs and federations and sharing the great knowledge they have internally in Barcelona. I think it's a real asset to have you tonight, and thank you again for joining. We also have Aviv Shapira, one of the brightest entrepreneurs I met in the last few years, together with his brother. They managed to take a young company from Tel Aviv and sell it to Intel in $175 million within a few years. And we want to hear a little bit of the, behind the screens of what happened there, Aviv. And again, thank you as well for joining. I know you're already up to your next venture now, so maybe you can give us also an idea of what it is.
Yeah, sure.
And,
thank you.
We also have here Massimo. Hey, Massimo from London, with the ASER group, the Chief Innovation Officer. Apart from, I know you have a very impressive portfolio of investing in great companies. Obviously, among them, Leeds United, the 49ers, and also there was a nice deal recently which you led with Whistle Sports. Again, somebody who's very much hands-on what's happening now in sports innovation. So I think we really have a very special panel tonight, and really looking forward to hear what you guys have to say. And also, if there will be a time, we will allow a little bit of questions from the crowd. I can see more and more people joining. So that's great. I've asked the Hype CEO to give us like a 5 minutes, a very quick overview about the industry. So Ilan, please, you can start, and then we'll start the session.
Okay, thank you, Amir. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I know a lot of you. I will try not to steal the show from the fantastic panel, just to give a very high-level overview from the Hype perspective. So, first of all, for those of you who are not very familiar with Hype, like a very high-level slide. So, who do we serve as Hype? We are serving the whole sport ecosystem between startups, sports brand and clubs, leagues, federation, and investors. And what do? We are basically solving real problems for the sport ecosystem through the power of innovation. There is one mission that Hype is doing with all its initiative. And the way we do it is by a couple of initiatives, accelerators, which is, we are getting into the 10th accelerator running now, startup pitching competitions, all kind of startup programs, club programs, and all of these activities are creating the base for investment fund, which we are now starting to be active. So in a nutshell, this is what Hype is doing, and I will jump right into things that related to the presentation. So we are, as Amir started, in the perfect storm. The sport industry is being transformed and disrupted from every aspect. Teams and brands and technologies are emerging, and there are a couple of reasons for that. I would say there are few that are very dominant. One of them is the internet shopping segments that are coming up, like eSport and fantasy sport and virtual reality. But I would say that the most important thing is the social media, which is capturing the attention of the new generation and changing the way people are consuming sports with short attention span, with the way of short videos and multiple screens. And this is really, really a big change. Just in that chart, you could see how many people are capturing sport along the different social media. So I would like to focus in 5 minutes on three big dominant things, okay? One of them is the fact that, as I said, the new consumers have very small, short attention span, okay? That is leading to an accelerator in the pace of the game. I can have in half an hour showing you many data points, how almost every sport that exists today is shortening the attention, shortening the game, reducing the intermission, and so on. You know, even golf is being disrupted with a clock for the heat. And my forecast is that tennis, for example, will go to a tie break only in 5 or 10 years, and you can see that the new formats that are capturing the Davis Cup and so on. So every technology, every innovation that is being able to accelerate the game is being growing. The next thing is that people and fans want to get deeper game experience. And we can see that with sensing, video, audio, with a general connection between the people that are in the arena and outside the arena and so on. And the last thing is that because of all the platform that exists, the individual athlete is getting more and more power. And there are many data points, and I will show maybe one of them, that the power or the value of the individual sport athlete is getting greater than the team or even the league itself. So Hype was one of the pioneers when we did a survey about a year ago, and then we further on and deepened our understanding. And we found out, for example, that baseball, golf, and tennis are more in a risk to suffer from lack of innovation. That was a year and a half ago. Now, what happened in the last year and a half is a complete I would say, area of initiatives, like even in baseball, how much time can you stay on the mound, as I said, in golf, in tennis. However, more advanced sports like football, extreme sport, and basketball already are in deepening their understanding of the engagement with the fan. So they are getting more and more traction. You could see the basketball in the US moving from number 4 to practically number 1 in terms of engagement today. And while baseball is dropping from number 1 20 years ago to number 4, it's all about the new generation and the way they consume sports. The athletes, okay, if you look at Ronaldo, here is in the old Real Madrid theme, but he had like 7 or 8 times more followers than the team itself. And same with Kohli, which is the most popular cricket players in India. So imagine that, when who is more important, who has more value. Recently, there was a fantastic analysis of the Ronaldo economy coming into Juventus, and they could show there that even that they pay inflated dollars or euro for him, they can return that very gradually and can get money on bringing Ronaldo, even in the age that he is. And maybe a glimpse into the future about sensing. 5 or 10 years from now, when Stephen Curry or whoever it is, it could be the Greek freak on the line for the last second, we will be able to sense a lot of things from the arena. We could probably see his heartbeat, his fatigue level, the way of stress that he is having, and many other things that can be gauged today. The technology exists. It's only a matter of regulation, privacy, and confidentiality. But there is so much money. Imagine betting that is getting now into the sports and being regulated. How much money can they make on betting for the end of games or quarters if you have more sense of the athletes from the arena? So I will conclude with just, like a pictorial way of where we are today. On the right side, there are some, I would say, notable exits and merger. Of course, I put here Aviv's company, 3D, but there are some companies that are now in a huge billions of dollars, like Amir mentioned, Peloton and Sports Radar, SeatGeek, Bleacher Report, and so on. And it is only a testimonial to where we are when Facebook and Amazon and Apple and all those giants are now fighting for media rights, fighting for gear endorsement, and so on. So we are definitely in a deflection point where money is pouring into the arena, and we are in a great position to be in as people that are in the ecosystem of sports. Thank you for that. Thank you for listening, and let's have a great webinar.
Thank you, Ilan. I think it was great opening and context for what we're going to hear. So without waiting too long, I want to invite Mr. Uli Becker, the one and the only, all the way from Boston. Uli, what do you have to share? And by the way, the format today, we're doing a very short sessions with each one of our panelists, about 5-7 minutes, and then some open discussion and maybe some questions. I can see more and more people are joining from all over the world. That's great. Okay, Uli, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Let me just correct one thing. I'm not calling in from the wonderful city of Boston. I'm in the capital city of country music, Nashville, Tennessee today. Also at a startup conference, which made me a little bit tired because I was dancing too much last night. Having said that, I have a statement also towards Ilan. I don't know if I'm old school and extinct, but I like Barcelona as a football club still more so than I like any other player or Bayern Munich. Maybe that will not be the case anymore in 20 years, but I still think the club franchise is more valuable than the player, because it will outlive the player no matter what. But having said that, it's definitely time for polarizing conversations about that, because the world has really changed. Having been maybe one of the older guys in the panel, and potentially also with regard to who's all listening in, I thought I'll give a little bit of a context of sport of the last 30 years very quickly, just to kind of also root the whole discussion and where this has come from and what has happened over the last years that has created maybe the most exciting conversation in sports, not just with regard to the participation and watching of an event, but also with regard to vesting and being part of the business of sport, which obviously has changed dramatically. So to start this out, I started to work for Adidas in January of 1990. Family still owned the business of the Three Stripes, and really at that time, sport was still sport. You know, running shoes were actually bought by runners, not also by some others, but predominantly running shoes were for runners, as much as football shoes were bought by football players. I think at that time, Barcelona was still a football club and not a franchise, or same for Real Madrid, Bayern München, Liverpool, and so on and so forth. During those 15, 20 years then, the business in sport always grew. So whether it had something to do with sporting goods, any type of hardware, footwear, apparel, it was really crisis resistant. I remember the CEO of Adidas at that time saying, you know, we will grow when the times are good, and we will also grow when the times are bad, because sport overall always had been kind of an escape. For people that are happy, they watch it and play it. For people that are unhappy, it's actually kind of a step outside their misery to actually be deflected in their thoughts for a period of time. Hence, in crisis situations, sport always did better than most of the other categories. What changed then, you know, towards the end of the 90s, 2000s, the whole business of sport grew bigger, because it was not just about doing it yourself, but it was also about watching it. So all of a sudden, business potentials came about to sell licensed jerseys, as an example. Not just a few, but it was fashionable to wear actually the licensed jersey of any football club, or here in the USA. Obviously, we've got enough professional leagues to actually sit on the couch and also wear your, you know, Patriots jersey. Licensed business came up. Shoes were also, and apparel was also bought to actually display the image of sport rather than just doing sport yourself, which brings me also to the point, when you look at the big sports companies of traditional value, when they look at all their revenue and they would actually take out all the products they sell that are not used for sport, only 20% may actually still be the leftover of it. So the Adidas, Nikes, Under Armours of the world today do the biggest portion of their business towards consumers that actually buy that in the intention of sports inspiration rather than actually doing sport in it. So what that means is that the whole business of sport has moved from, you know, it's an active activity and I'll use all the products for that, into actually also the experience itself, which obviously has outgrown any category in that business. So if we get to the last 15 years, other categories and industries that are related to sport then have obviously then also merged in. So when you think about entertainment, you know, it actually merged in. Entertainers that are of any type of value normally connect now with sports companies to actually be associated with it, because the borders of those old traditional industries have actually melted. The other portion is fashion. You know, it used to be its own island to drive kind of the imagination of people, and it was highly priced to begin with. The last 10, 15 years, you've seen all sorts of design collaborations where, you know, designers go into sports companies to actually also create a merge between style and athletic functionality when it only comes to footwear or apparel, as an example. And then you go into the last 5 years, which really has a lot to do with what Elon was talking about. And then you are actually in a technical revolution that obviously has an impact on anything we do and how we live our lives today. But obviously it has had also and is continuing to have a significant impact on the sports world that already has grown so big in terms of offering more experience, more solutions that without technology we never had. And so it's the tech explosion on one side that has also been, I think, confirmed and reinforced by a change in the consumer behavior. Ilan was mentioning, obviously, that the attention span of today's consumers with all the millennials moving into the marketplace has shifted how you market to those people significantly. At the same time, though, also their transactional behavior has changed. I'm following in the last couple of years a lot of startup companies that actually really disrupt existing industries by just going direct to consumer, which 10 years ago was not possible. In today's world, given the marketing abilities and the change in consumer behavior and their willingness to actually also transact online, new companies pop up that had never the chance to be successful, and now they do have the chance to be successful, which is all driven by just the change in consumer behavior at the same time, while there is technological progress in terms of transactional activity, business model, or even product solution as such. So I'd say social media and the new generations of millennials have really changed the consumption of sport, and the diversification of opportunities are really leveraged by the technology that is now being displayed. I think, at least in my world, in the sports industry, 5 years ago, actually in 2008, I sat in the bird's nest of Beijing to see the opening of the Olympic Games. I think end of last year, or was it beginning of this year, that same stadium was filled with 80 or 90,000 people just watching an eSport competition. 5 years ago, nobody would have ever thought that could be possible. Well, today it's possible, and technology and the consumer change behavior has actually led to that. So technology is really the key to innovation, and obviously has had a huge impact also towards investment levels. I think Ilan didn't speak about that, but depending on what panel or whatever report you look at, I think the investment dollars into sport have moved from what was $500 million in 2011 to over $5 billion already in 2018, which just showcases that also within the world of business now, people are looking for what is happening, what is actually driving revenue, and what potentially becomes the future of sport in a existing category or one that is still to be defined because it just pops up. And that only showcases the importance, not just the sex appeal of sport itself, but also the importance of the business and what its future will be. And I think a few of those categories that weren't even there 5 years ago, Ilan was mentioning. So, whether it's Internet of Things related stuff like player safety or training and coaching, the tools that are already on the market in today's world, but then you actually increase your business potential when you talk about wearable tech. Fan engagement, one of the hugest topics, that's really nothing to do with sport, rather than making me happier as the audience member that sits at the basketball court, watches augmented reality and sees all sorts of statistics, while I watch the game, which actually deflects my attention from the game, but it's just increasing the value of why you actually also sit in the stadium in the future. And the big topic of media and broadcasting, obviously, is not just sports related, but obviously is a major impact on how business is also done in the future. If you look at broadcasting possibilities and the streaming, that again goes in line with the changes of consumer behavior, where even cable companies, I don't know how much that is a topic in Europe, for example, but in the US, all those cable companies will be out of business in the next couple of years. So they used to pay for the broadcasting rights of NFL. Well, if everybody starts streaming, which what they do is there's new revenue coming in for the NFL, and those used to be old big sponsors of the game may be obsolete in the future. And so this whole turmoil of changes and how the business will come together to a good degree also is caused by sport and offers additional opportunities. And not that I've done some research, but I think it's XTEND who made a major investment in eSport a little while ago, courtside, invested into Sportech. I know Adidas, by obviously still being fairly close to those guys, spent 20-25 million in a new sustainable way of printing footwear, which potentially puts everything upside down how the industry has actually operated over the last 40 years. So their strive to innovate and change how the world is clicking within the bigger territory of sport is very clear. And it's done to a degree to survive, because if you continue to do your stuff like you've done it the last 20 years, you will not survive. But if you innovate, you're also part of the future. And I think that is very much visible within the big territory of sport, which is global, connected, and universal in how you do things. And I want to end this maybe with a word, because Ami, you also introduced me that I've worked with you guys a little bit. I love and I'm very passionate about sport, and it doesn't matter what sport. It's as long as there's competition and something works, it drives my heart, has done so all my life. If you have that, and you then see the world of business of sport, which I worked in for 30 years, is changing, but there's really no area or capital where all the people that have something to do with sport can meet, whether it's entrepreneurship, startups, and at the same time also the investment money or the network that has something to do with it. And you see it in the panel in terms of brilliance of coming from different areas, then I believe that Hype is up to something that is really, really valuable in the future, because there is no capital for sport in terms of ecosystem and meeting point. Amir said, I live in Boston, so I know anything to do with biotech. All companies, all money sits either in Boston or sits in the Valley. Anything related to AI, they sit in Boston, they sit in the Valley. So all the other big areas already have a geographical place. And I think sport deserves one. And if it's a digital one where we all come together, discuss polarizing topics and how the future of sport with all those categories will be in the future, then I think we're doing not just ourselves, but also the world a favor, because it's worth to do this. So don't want to be too pathetic about the passion part of this, but I think it's what connects us all. Hence,
absolutely,
we speak about it because we share in this. And having said that, lastly, other than it's a business, sport has also always been a factor that unites, even enemies in terms of war zones and everything else. So we've got not just a business responsibility, the passion that we have for it, we actually also deal with something that has a much, much bigger value that actually is worthwhile also doing a great job for. So that's my spiel for today.
Thank you very much for the spiel, Uli. I think it was a fascinating perspective and overview. I have few questions I have for you, but I'll try to save them to the end. For example, as somebody grew up in Adidas and heading Reebok, I know that one of the main triggers for what's happening now is brands and the transformation they're going through in terms of adapting to open innovation, unlike the way they were used to work in the past. And nobody wants to become the next Kodak, as they say. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you have something, things to say about that, but we'll keep it for later. You have an option as crowd. More people are joining. Susanne, welcome. Andrew, thank you very much. Uli, we want to move now to Javier from Barcelona. Javier, if you can unmute yourself so we can hear you. No. Try to unmute yourself.
No, done.
Oh, yeah.
It was you. Hello,
okay.
everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you good.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Hype. Thank you, Amir and Elan, for the invitation. And I fully agree with Uli. And actually, it's part of my daily activity. I run both strategy and innovation for FC Barcelona. So part of my duty is to make Barca brand bigger than players brand. So that's part of my of my goal, and this is absolutely key for us. From Barca perspective, we set up a couple of years ago a project and an area that is called knowledge area, and within the knowledge area we set up what we call the Barca Innovation Hub project. What is Barca Innovation Hub project? Uli mentioned and Ilan as well that the sport industry is changing and is suffering a lot from many different perspectives, and obviously environment is completely different from years ago. And sport is I would say the most transversal human activity, since it impacts many other activities from economic perspective, but from social perspective and many other perspectives. So being such a big and global brand as Barca, we have to define a completely different strategy to deal with this very specific and radically changing environment. And we thought that the tool to deal with this environment was innovation. And this is why we set up Barca Innovation Hub, which is a project that was presented a year and a half ago, and it was presented in Mobile World Congress because we thought in Barcelona, because we thought it was the right way and the right forum to present a project that deals with innovation, the digital technology, and obviously it deals with sport, but uses innovation and technology as a tool for us to be sustainable. We are not only suffering the changes that come from technology, we are also suffering the changes that come from the football environment. And there are new competitors out there in the market that are competing in a different way. So we have to be ourselves, as FC Barcelona, a sustainable club for the future. So doing the same things the same way we have done so far will bring us to a point where these new competitors that count on very strong shareholders, this will give us a result that will not be competitive anymore. So probably all of you or most of you will be aware that we are a members club, so we are a very special governance structure and property structure. So we don't have a shareholder that we can ask to raise capital and to increase our financial resources. So we have to generate our resources. We are a non-profit actually, and the resources that we generate are the ones that we can invest. If we don't generate resources, we cannot invest, and in that path we will not be competitive. So long story short, we thought that obviously, apart from the brand, apart from the digital strategy, apart from the regular sponsorship strategy, we have to count on innovation in order to remain competitive and remain one of the key football clubs in the world. And that's why we launched Barca Innovation Hub. Barca Innovation Hub pretends to be a key innovation center in the sports industry worldwide. We set up this strategy based on three key concepts. The three key concepts that we have defined is concept lab, ecosystem, and platform. Let me explain you guys these three concepts from our perspective. The first one is the concept laboratory. We are a multi-sports club. We have athletes from 8 years old to the top professional athletes. We have women and men's sport. We have 9 amateur sport on top of our 5 professional sports. We have a sports city. We have an arena. We have a stadium, the biggest football stadium in Europe. We have a campus around that. So, and these are the resources that we on a daily basis manage in order to make Barca successful. But if we look at all of these resources from an innovation perspective, we can say that we are a huge sports lab in the sports industry. So we put all those resources at the disposal of any institution, any company, any research center that would like to innovate with us. And this brings me to the second concept, which is ecosystem. If we want to innovate, we cannot do it by ourselves. So we believe in open innovation. And that's why we are setting up that big ecosystem, inviting different types of entities from universities, research centers, hospitals, startups, sponsors of the club, big corporations, in order to join us to go through that path of innovation. So that's our second concept. We count on third parties and obviously financial investors. And let me keep this point for the end of my presentation. But we obviously are deal on a daily basis with financial investors. And the third concept is platform. We want to integrate all of this, the lab and the ecosystem, in a digital platform that will allow us to scale ourselves and to share knowledge, incorporate knowledge, and generate revenue from everything that we are doing. Barcelona Innovation Hub has 3 key goals. The first one is obviously detect the best projects, products, technologies, and companies in the world of sport in order to deal with them. The second one is that we as a club, probably you have heard our claim that is more than a club, més que un club in Catalan. So we want to contribute to this positioning from innovation perspective. So it's a brand development purpose as well. But the third purpose is we want to generate new revenue. Barcelona Innovation Hub tends to be the diversification tool of the club, moving purely from a sports club to a sports company. A sports company meaning entertainment company, content company, digital company, data company. So we want to follow the path of diversification through innovation. So these are the goals. And which are the areas in which we focus? We focus in 3 main areas. The first one is everything that has to do with sport itself, and I will explain this afterwards. The second one is everything that has to do with the fun, and the third one is social impact. And let me start with this one. This is the way that by which we support our foundation. That, by the way, this year reached more than 1 million beneficiaries, all of them children, using sport in order to generate a social impact. So social impact is also an area in which innovation is key for the club. From a sport perspective, we split this area in 2. First one is everything that has to do with health and well-being. So we want to innovate and count on third parties for everything that has to do with injury prevention, injury treatment, health, rest, well-being, sleep, nutrition, hydration. So everything that has to do with the preparation of our athletes. And the second area within sport is what we call sport performance. Sport performance dealing with technology, game analysis, individual and collective performance. So we deal with everything that has to do with how to improve and how to optimize the performance of our athletes. So social, sport, and the third one is everything that has to do with the fun. And within this area, we have split this in 2 as well, and everything that has to do with fan engagement, how we better know our fan. It's not a question of social networks. We use social networks. We are on the top of social network followers worldwide, but we realized years ago that this is not enough. We need to know our fans, and we need to invest and innovate in everything that has to do with, or in everything that helps us to better know our fans and to better serve our fans. Yeah. And the other part is what we call smart facility. We are going through a huge investment process to renovate our facilities. This is a project that the club is executing from this summer that implies an investment of more than 600 million euros. And we don't want this to be the new stadium of the club. We don't want to be the new arena of the club. We want this to be an innovation space for the sports industry that obviously has to do with construction, that has to do with utilities, has to do with mobility, has to do with many of the things that are related to sport. So these are the areas of Barca Innovation Hub. We have a dedicated team in order to manage with all of this. And again, as a final point, obviously financial investors are really interesting for us, because we as a members club, from a governance standpoint, we are not allowed to invest in the opportunities ourselves, but we are obviously in contact with different financial investors that would like to invest in the opportunities that we detect, and that want to share those opportunities, and they want to test those opportunities in our lab. And obviously this is something that for us as a club is a priority, as I was telling you before at the beginning, because for sustainability purposes. So innovation for us is key. Barca Innovation Hub is one of the key projects in the club, and I'm very happy to answer any question that you might have during the session.
Javier, thank you very much for this. And we're working very closely with clubs around the world in different sports. It was always very clear that Barcelona has a very clear agenda, very clear vision in terms of where you're going. And also, as I said earlier, the fact that you're sharing this vision with many federations and clubs around the world, I think it's commendable. And you really feel when we've been around there in your place, there is a very structured way of working. You also shared with me, and I think it's amazing to see that more and more clubs are starting to create their own accelerators and innovation hubs. And you can see that on one hand, the clubs would like to have access to the best innovations. On the other hand, they would like to take part in what the future of those startups can bring. Yeah, and I think you already developing a very interesting model around that, and the fact that you're putting together the ecosystem, I think it's great. And I think there will be, as you shared, I'm sure there will be some specific opportunities which could be relevant either for our fund or for some of the investors that have joined us today here. So thank you very much, Javier. We may have one or two questions for you later on. I want to move now to an entrepreneur, Aviv Shapira, just to recall for the people that joined us a bit late. Aviv and his brother started Replay, and after a few years sold the company to Intel in over $170 million. Replay is a technologist I'm sure most of you have seen. Maybe Aviv will explain what it is, but I know that Intel now is very proud of this, and it's perhaps one of the main products, their claim to fame in terms of sports innovation. So Aviv, please take us to a journey.
Thank you, Amir. I hope you can hear me okay, but also I hope you can also see my videos. It's hard to tell a story about something so visual and emotional without showing some videos. So I trust everything will be okay. So I think we can all talk about what we think will happen in the future and how we see things evolving in the ecosystem of the sport industry. But I want to give you a personal story, something which happened to our company, and it's very well connected to how this industry will be in the future. So as Amir said, and thank you for the kind words, Amir, my name is Aviv Shapira. I was the co-founder of Replay Technology. Replay was a startup that had a very big dream to basically reinvent video by enabling a 3D video format that allows a fan to enter the video itself. A lot of you have seen some of the projects that we have done across the world, mostly in NFL, soccer, and NBA. And I want to show you and actually tell you a story today that is very interesting. It will kind of give you an edge of how to invest in sports in the future from my perspective. So moving on, hopefully you can see the videos. If not, it's okay as well. Um, so Replay was very promising. 7 months after the company was founded, we were already broadcasting to about 1 billion people in the Olympics. That's the left video you can see on the screen. On the right, you can see some videos from our projects in the past. And we thought that we kind of reached the stars. Nothing can stop us now, as written on the slide. And something really interesting happened. As a very ambitious technology company, we thought that we know what we're doing, and we developed a technology that was what we believed was what the sport industry needs. And right after the Olympics, we went into baseball and into a project with the New York Yankees. And a few months after that, in October 2013, the company actually ran out of money, and we had to close shop. It was a very it's a very, for any company, it's very tough. We had to let go of all the employees in the company. We had to find new ways of getting money, and the main reason why that happened is that because we developed our technology without talking to customers. So, we told customers, we have this amazing video, you should see it. It looks cool, it will bring you fan engagement, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, it wasn't what the customer wanted. And, we tried to get contracts. We were very, kind of snob with our nose up after the Olympics and after the Yankees. We thought we can enter the NFL. We thought we can enter soccer without really understanding how this ecosystem works. And we actually ran out of money when we had to almost close the company. Luckily, we got an additional funding of about $500,000 that we managed to use that money very, very precisely to find what we call an early adopter customer. And actually, I'm actually happy to say that name here out loud, but that was Fred Gadelli from the NFL, the Sunday Night Football producer. He gave us a chance, and together with Fred, we developed a product that was a very, very perfect fit for the NFL. That product is what made NBC Sunday Night Football show better. It gave them a new way of telling a story, which was what they wanted. Hopefully, you can see the videos behind what I'm talking. And we did some really interesting things together with the NFL and with NBC. And we created a really, really cool product that was tailor fit to the customer. I call that methodology a closed loop development, and we actually won 2 Emmy Awards for what you see in front of you. So going back to what we talked about in terms of investing in a company. So you can see a lot of companies out there, probably hundreds or maybe thousands of companies, but I would invest in the companies that are from day one talking to the customers and understanding what the product, in the professional terms, it's called product market fit, what the product is on both sides of the fence, not on the technology side itself. I know that Hype is also a big believer in that methodology, and together with Ilan and Amir, we're trying to develop a new way of working on one hand with the customers and on the other hand with the startups themselves. That methodology, we believe, is the future of sports. Understanding the problems on one hand from the customer, and having thousands of startups in the database, and trying to solve those problems very, very specifically and efficiently. So this is how I see sports innovation and also investments in sports in the future. If I may, 1 minute about myself and what I'm doing today. So, going from a very exciting project from Replay into something very, very exciting as well, a new company called XTEND, which works not only in the sports industry, but basically what we're doing is we're enabling people a new way of visualizing life, a new way of experiencing life, and for us, sports is a big part of life as well. If I want to speak down to earth and not in big logos and lines, we're using virtual reality together with augmented reality to create a new experience for people to enter drones and feel like they're sitting on a drone and flying. That has many applications for defense, cinema, sports, e-commerce, and also gaming. It's a very young company, very promising, and this is what I'm doing today. I'll be happy to answer more questions about it privately. That's it. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And thank you, Amir, for hosting me.
Aviv, how old are you, if I may ask?
I look 24, but I'm almost 40. I'm 30.
Great stuff. So no Bahamas and 2 years around the world for you. Straight to the next startup, yeah?
No, after the third exit, maybe. I'm too hungry for doing that.
This is really mind-blowing, and just thinking what you can do within the next startup. So great stuff. Again, great stuff. Thank you very much for this, Aviv, and also sharing the downside and how you managed to really rise from almost being out of business to being sold to Intel. And we also, I don't know, the video wasn't working so well here, but most of the people saw your product when they saw in the NFL final the camera from the head of Tom Brady and around the table, around the stadium, where it was like 3D moving and it's like stopped and moved around. The same, we can see it in the Classico with Messi in one of his shots there. So and we know and we hear Intel how they speak about this. It's like the Hawkeye, the new Hawkeye of sports. So really, thank you for this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have another speaker today. Honored to have Massimo here. Massimo, very much hands-on investing and working closely with some of most promising ventures in sports. And please, very interesting to hear what you have to say about innovation in sports and investing in this space.
Okay, thank you, Amir. Hope you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invite, and it's a pleasure to be speaking together with such a great panel today. I think, as you said, relative to the other speakers, my role is on the investment side, and in the past I used to be a banker, so advising lots of companies in the sports space in my previous career. Over the last 18 months or so, I've been a chief investment officer for the ASER group, which, for who doesn't know, is basically currently focused on two main assets. One of which is a sports media platform. It's 11 sports. We are currently operating in over 10 markets, including UK and Ireland, Portugal, Belgium, Luxembourg, Poland, Italy, United States, Singapore, and Taiwan. And we've got a couple more coming soon. And then the other asset that people may be familiar with is Leeds United, the football club in the Championship, one of the so-called sleeping giants in football, given that it's in the second division in England, but obviously with a lots of history behind. On my side, what I wanted to touch on this webinar is really, why we think it's a great time to invest in the industry, and what are some of the examples and case studies that I think we can relate to show why it's such a great time to invest. And obviously, I think I echo a little bit what have been said so far in terms of the experience that has been mentioned by Uri, Javier, and Aviv. I think definitely, from our side, we see strong growth in this space, and so we think it's really a fantastic time to be involved in sports and what comes with it. So, the broader sports media and sports tech environment. We think sports is and will continue to be special because it creates an appointment to watch that ultimately, be that Barcelona or Real Madrid or Juventus or Leeds United. There are clearly teams that people do not want to watch, or be the players, as we was saying. And clearly, as we're seeing the younger demographics diverting to the importance of individuals as well as teams. I think ultimately we see a lot of importance in the ability to exploit non-live rights on top of live rights. And obviously, if I look at what we do with 11 Sports, we're very much focused on live rights. But to be fair, as Uli was saying, the importance of, as he was said at the beginning of the webinar, the importance of social media is only growing. And obviously, social media can be important also for exploring non-live rights. And on our side, that's why we've been leading the Series D in a company called Whistle Sports that is basically focusing on exploring non-live rights for the biggest influencers in sports. And I think it's amazing to think that there are companies that can manage over 500 million aggregated social audience per month of younger people, basically looking at people doing trick shots or other non-live rights opportunities. Obviously, and that's behind the focus of hype. Amir, obviously in what you do, there is significant innovation, and on our side we continue to receive and see a lot of companies that are focused on how to continue to innovate in sports, be that in the data sector, in the broadcasting sector, in the distribution sector. There is a significant amount of innovation that we continue to see, and I think that should continue to attract investment. Then I think I'd like to highlight that there is a potential for increasing professionalism in sports. I think not to say that is not something that some of the biggest clubs are already doing, but definitely we think particularly when you look at sports club opportunities, the ability to be a little bit more scientific on how to manage some of the clubs. Obviously, this is not for the top clubs, but we think that's an opportunity that investors can catch that will continue to manifest itself in ability to realize good investments in the space. And finally, maybe the last thing I like to mention is the ability to be able to exploit what has been the polarization versus the big rights in terms of the media, the attention for large media conglomerates or large media distributors towards big rights. Within that create opportunities, partially tied to technology, because clearly if before you only had 3 channels per country to be able to watch a major sport event, now on top of the major sports events, if you are passionate for whatever micro sports or whatever other thing, you can clearly try and catch it maybe through a streaming technology. And that's something that obviously creates a lot of opportunities both for rights holders and also for distributors that may be focused on better monetizing some of these rights that haven't been monetized in the past. And so if I look at what that has meant for us, I think it creates and it created significant opportunities for our ASER to do well in this space. And 11, I think, is a fantastic success story that we can mention, given what it has achieved since 3 years ago when it was launched. I mean, we have over 70 million subscribers. We're operating, as I was saying, in 10 million in over 10 countries. We produce over 30,000 live hours of content, and obviously it's an opportunity to both focus on major live rights like we do in some countries. We have rights for La Liga in 4 or 5 countries here in Europe, or Serie A in as many, but also looking at exploring smaller rights. So for example, in Italy we only do streaming of the 3rd division football, the Serie C, which is something that again probably you wouldn't be able to exploit properly on a fully distributed linear channel. I think similarly, we have looked at what the investment we made in Whistle Sports and what the company has achieved. We're very confident that that's a fantastic space to be involved in, and we think John West and the team there has done a great job in monetizing revenues on the social media platforms, and that's something that obviously will continue to grow. But even if I look beyond where we are, there are a significant number of case studies that I think should continue to show that there are a lot of opportunities to continue to do well in this space. You know, I think Uri was saying in the past that at the beginning, or you know, maybe it was you, Amir, your team, that you think in tennis, you know, in 5-10 years, you know, there might be only tie breaks. Obviously, you know, there are people that are looking at only organizing tie break competitions. But you know, even forgetting, you know, some of the new competitions that may be coming out in sports, you know, we can look, I think, at Formula E and what they have achieved, and speaking to their shareholders, they continue to be very, very positive about it. And obviously, they have been able to create some, you know, significant brand in the space, which is ultimately, you know, a demonstration that it's possible to innovate in creating new competition, new sports. I think, you know, we look at what the world of eSports has achieved, and how, you know, these are, you know, new tournaments, new players, new teams that have been created, new events organizers that are operating in this space. And I think will continue to be something that everybody has to watch. Or even, you know, what some of the, let's say, older giants have been able to achieve and how they've grown. You know, I can name maybe IMG or CAA in this space, and how they're diversifying in different ways. And I think, you know, continues to show that ultimately there is a lot to go after in this space.
Okay, Massimo.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for this. And you know, you mentioned focusing on you know, some of the examples you gave are around broadcasting, and we can see now Facebook, Amazon, Google getting heavily into this. If you can, I would say, you know, some of the investors that we have here as guests are already have experience in investing in sports, but some are looking at this or exploring investing in sports. What would you say are the 2 or 3 hot topics from what you see to invest in sport these days?
Look, I think, you know, ultimately, you know, I probably have to repeat a little bit of, you know, eSports as a key category of people, you know, attracting attention. I think there is still a little bit of uncertainty from investors, including ourselves, on what's the best place to invest in esports. But I think, you know, you got to look at that as a space that is very important. You know, obviously a lot of US teams have made investments in this space. I have to say, you know, on our side, for example, we are, you know, a little bit unsure whether teams is the best place to be in esports. But I think we definitely want to be in that space. And in fact, you know, with 11 Sports, we already broadcast esports competition. You know, we see that as something that continue to attract important demographics and audiences. I think, you know, to be fair, you know, you mentioned the importance of Facebook, the emergence of Facebook and Amazon on live sports. And clearly, you know, I'm based in London. I've experienced that very recently with the US Open. Is available only on Amazon here in the UK. Yeah. Or even, you know, what we do with the likes of Facebook. You know, we, for example, have launched in the UK. We are at the moment a streaming only proposition, but our strategy is to partner with all the distributors out there. And so, for example, we have agreed to show at least one match of La Liga and one match of Serie A every week on Facebook ourselves. We think, you know, those are people that will continue to look at the space, but to be fair, that we rely also on other content providers like us to be able to understand what it is that can be shown on Facebook and how better to be monetized. Because ultimately, you know, maybe there are some major properties that are easier to catch and easier to understand what those are, but there are a number of others, and ultimately, you know, attracting the right content around it, the right no-live commentary, the right no-live events is something that will still require significant input from third parties.
Great, thank you for this. You mentioned eSport, Javier. Talking about eSport, we just came back from the Sport Biz in Cologne, where it was focusing on media and eSports for clubs from all over Europe. I think everybody's investing in this. Some are more advanced than others. Where are you in eSports?
Great question. We are right now making a strategic reflection on eSports, actually. And and we don't have the solution yet. There are people within the club saying we should go that direction. Others, me for instance, I think that I'm not saying that esports is definitely not a very profitable and a very promising arena, but dealing with a brand such as FC Barcelona, I'm not quite sure whether that Barca should pursue that trend. And actually, we haven't made that decision yet. Obviously, there is a huge opportunity there, but to be very honest, we haven't made a decision yet. I think we have quite clear that we will not set up a team. I don't think that should be the direction. I think that if we want to occupy part of that space, it would be probably something more related to people that are already Barca fans and organizing competitions, not setting up a team.
Got it. So you're not going to set up a team at the moment,
No.
as far as you're concerned, and without any pressure, this session is being recorded, so we can play it in 2 years' time and see where we are.
Okay, if then we win the eSports championship, I will be happy.
Yeah, but I'm sure you have enough assets to worry about and to leverage from and to build and to grow, so I can see where you're coming from. Uli, talking about what's happening now in the brands. I know some of them are really in real of transformation. And do you see an opportunity there as far as investments are concerned?
What type of brands are you?
In terms of brands, bringing in open innovation, bringing innovation from outside of the brand.
Yeah, well, of course that is the case. In the past, at least the businesses that I'm more privy of, there was a lot of advanced research that was all in-house. You did talk to inventors maybe now and then, but most of the innovation power you try to produce within your own four walls. That ain't the case anymore in today's world, obviously. So, I spoke earlier about Adidas that has a venture fund, and they are, going out to see what actually kind of supports their core business in the future. So does Nike. I think Under Armour was on a big streak a couple of years ago. I'm not quite sure if they really made something out of it because it was fashionable to invest that time, but they spend a lot of money. And I see that there's a lot of outreach, as do all other industries, like that carbon 3D print company that Adidas invests in so much is BMW with their venture arm in it, or GE. So because they all see this can actually be profitable investment also for their respective industries. So yes, they're all reaching out. That's actually not just reduced to sports companies. What I would like to say though, in terms of, because I anticipate what do you think is important in terms of investment? My experience of the last couple of years when I moved out of the big global business and looked into startups and entrepreneurship, first of all, I believe that starting a business in today's world was never a better timing than there is today, which I think is clear. You can actually disrupt with the technology on the side. I've seen companies become successful that I would have never expected, because it is possible. Like we said, consumer change of behavior, how they spend their time, how they transact, as much as technology, how to get there with a product that is meaningful, whether it's a service or a product, doesn't really make any difference. My experience has been, and I wonder what other panelists are saying about that. When I started this a couple of years ago, I thought, I want to be really bold and disruptive and go really far in terms of what I believe can be really good, because, we will get there very soon. And I stayed a bit away from what I thought was only a small step forward, even if the business model is good. But, that product is not so much different than what I know. We may have done that ourselves. And funny enough, what actually happened was that the projects and startups that were not that far out actually became highly successful. Like one of my favorite ones is Allbirds, which is actually just a normal shoe, and a couple of crazy guys, investment guy and an inventor, actually came together and they started something that was zero, and today they are hugely successful 3 times refinanced with a lot of money for a normal footwear brand. So I just want to share a bit the notion and experience of, sometimes you don't have to really reinvent the whole world already to actually become also hugely successful and, have an exit that actually is meaningful. So there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah. So in terms of, investing in specific segments, you're saying that you don't have to reinvent anything. Sometimes you can just, find a good Me Too product, a bit different, and still, like in any business, make a good investment. Now, moving to this, Aviv.
That's a bit negative. Yeah. Like I'm not saying you don't have to be innovative, but I think there are different degrees of being really out there and just doing it a little bit better.
Excellent. And this leads us directly to Aviv. Aviv, you mentioned some of the mistakes when we spoke earlier, some mistakes that investors are doing. And for the crowd we have today, maybe you can share 2 major mistakes you think investors are doing, seeing it from firsthand.
It's hard to say mistakes investors are doing. I talked about what investors should do, and that is, especially in this industry, is invest in companies which are working in a closed loop environment. Therefore working with people like Javier and others, and not working alone.
You mean companies that already have a customer, like a pilot customer to work with, like you had with ABC?
Yeah, I know. We started with at least a letter of intent from OBS. This is how the company started. OBS said, if you can do what you're saying you can do, yeah, we would like such a product. And that's for us was an assurance that what we're developing is actually necessary. I see a lot of developments. I don't want to name any company, but a lot of developments in this industry which are, I think are less important or what we call nice to have and not must have. You see a lot of technologies that are nice to have and they're on screen and then they go off the screen just because they're not necessary for sports. One of the best examples is the first and 10-yard lines in NFL. Obviously, you cannot watch NFL without it. So that kind of technology is a must-have technology, and the soon as we recognize those in the future are, it's the best. It's very hard to say what mistakes to look out for. We all talk about the good team. We all know what that means. And I would just say, search for a company that understands the customer and a company that has a really good team.
Okay, we are very close to wrapping it up. I want to do a quick round with the panelists and start with you, Massimo. From your position now, if I have, as an investor, $1 million to invest, what kind of 2 advice you can give me?
Well, I think, the good news is that there is a lot of investment professionals also coming out focused on sports. So I think, to be fair, for that sort of amount, I would probably think, associating myself to some of those investment professionals, because obviously, you're better off diversifying as much as possible. There are some sports tech funds that have been raised in the past, others will be raised. I think associating with some of the people that have got resources, times, and dedicated professionals with the space, it's a good starting point. I think, in terms of opportunities, as I was saying before, there are many. So I wouldn't want to pick one over the other, to be fair. Ultimately, it depends a little bit on, also personal preferences.
I thought you would say to bring it to Leeds United to help it promote.
I wouldn't want to be as direct.
Yeah, I remember Leeds United.
Obviously, I do.
Times.
Yeah, no, obviously we do put ourselves as institutional smart investors.
How does the team look like this year? Just in a sentence.
We just announced a new loan signing of Izzy Brown from Chelsea. So we continue to strengthen the team. Obviously, I think tomorrow is the last day for season loans. But to be fair, it's a long season. Championship is a long season. So as people may be aware,
are you going to go up this year? You going to go up this year, Massimo?
Look, I mean, we made significant investments, including on the manager. I think.
Yes. No.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. No.
Knee.
You're an investment banker all the way. All right, Aviv. What about you? One or two your thoughts for investors, $1 million now.
Yeah, I would like Massimo said, I would go for diversity. So we all believe in sports. This is why we're all here on the line. So I would try to invest in a something diversified, like a fund, something which invest in other small companies. I know Hype has a fund. I know other companies have funds. Something which is diversified as much as possible.
Thank you very much, Javier. I hope you have a different answer.
I fully agree with Aviv before when he was saying put the client in the center, and I think there are some clients right now in the sports industry that would like to be served with new products, new technologies, and I'm referring to clubs and sports institutions. So I think I will be very close to the sport entities actually. And any investment that is quite close to any sport club or institution, or even investing in those vehicles that some clubs are creating, I think that would be a good suggestion.
Got it. Be close to the clubs. By the way, I don't know if you saw, there is a club in Germany, League 4. Uli, I don't know if you heard of it. I forgot the name. Two senior investors took the club from the fourth division, and they're going to make it, as they say, the first global technology digital club. All around technology, eSport, but also have on the pitch. They're going to bring blockchain technologies into it, all tech digital club. And they say in the clip of 1 minute, it will be bigger than Barcelona in a few years' time.
Well, let me just say, Germany wanted to become world champion this year too, and it didn't work out. So.
Oops. Yeah, you said it.
Yeah, I know. You have to be, real about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Javier. Uli, your points, perhaps to wrap it up.
I think good arguments were given for a fund, which I obviously also subscribe to. Maybe on top of and getting diversification through that. Based on my personal opinion right now, I think, because we've talked about eSport a bit, Javier spoke about that. I'm not quite sure if that has been overpriced right now, because everybody jumped in, and when you see the numbers that were part of that, then I'm not quite sure if that's maybe the biggest way of making money these days, because you can be wrong with it clearly. Not saying that applies to everything, but it's a tougher, already far more, accelerated marketplace. What I believe still can work, which, was hyped maybe a couple of years ago, on one side wearable, because there's a lot of sensor technology that I believe can do a real good job and can become not just a sports utility, but then at the same time also branches out into other industries like healthcare, for example, which I think is something to watch. And I also believe that fan engagement is a real important factor. So it's not just my own activity towards eSport, but anything related to fan engagement, knowing that the TV audiences or the liking of, sports franchises and assets is still increasing. You can actually still you can find interesting ideas as well that can become really meaningful. So those are areas I'm looking at least. But at the end of the day, it's then also a vetting of the 100 potential ideas you see, and then picking what you believe can actually go the furthest.
Okay. Anybody wants to say anything to complete? Thank you very much, all. I just want to wrap up by sharing that most of you, maybe some of you know that I have 3 boys. One is 19, one 21, and one is 1 year and 4 months, baby. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've watched sports with my older kids all the time. I'm probably going to watch sport with my baby as well, with 20 years difference. And I'm asking myself how this experience will be in the next few years, and also how many great companies I will be involved in to really impact this industry. So that's something perhaps to look at. But our industry is going through really a major transformation, very fast one. Interesting to see where we're going to be in 1 year, 2 years time. This industry and us in our endeavors. So thank you very much all. Thank you all our crowd that joined from all over the world. Really appreciate that you're taking from your time and joining us. Some of you from crazy hours in Taiwan, in the East, in the US, very early. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon in the next webinar. Bye for now.